Alright, all you glorious gamers out there, welcome to the PlayersToo Podcast, the video game podcast for gamers like you, by gamers like you. You can find PlayersToo on all the social media, that's Facebook, Twitter, YouTube, Instagram, the lot. You can also find our written content over at PlayersToo.com, that's PlayerStoo.com. And if you could take 5 seconds to give us 5 stars over on Apple Podcasts or wherever you get your podcasts, it really, really helps us out. I know I say it every single week, but it does not become less important on a weekly basis. And thank you so much to anyone that's already done that for us. It really, really helps us out. All right, and on with the show. My name is Mark Henderson. With me, as always, Mr. Lewis Camley. How's it going, Lewis?
Good, Mark. Good to be here again. It doesn't feel like a week could possibly have passed since we last did this.
Been that busy then?
Been that busy. It feels like one long shift with very small breaks in between for sort of washing and eating and sleeping occasionally. How you doing?
Yeah, much better than you, apparently. Also busy at work. But Lewis, let's talk about some video games. What have you been playing this week?
Well, much the same as last week. I've barely had any time to play anything very much, so still picking away at Ghost of Tsushima. I don't really have anything new to add about that, although I am now into the sort of second section of the map and just enjoying the new things that that's bringing. I like that it's adding things there that I wasn't really expecting it, to be honest. I thought there would be a difficulty jump and just some new environments and that would be it, but there's some actually things that are happening that weren't in the first part of the game. Other than that, I started playing Grindstone on Apple Arcade, more or less based on your recommendation last week. Yeah, you said it was just something good to do with your hands, and that's sort of essentially the gaming time that I've had this week has been like an hour before I fall asleep, essentially. So Grindstone just felt like the right thing.
Totally, 100%.
Yeah, and it's been fun so far. Like, I've played maybe 6 levels.
Yeah, that's all it is, man. I mean, it's literally the same thing. It just gets steadily more difficult.
Exactly, yeah.
It's just quite good fun and really lends itself perfectly to the mobile formula, and could easily have been a game full of horrendous predatory pay-to-win mechanics. But it isn't that, and it just shows that those games with those horrendous mechanics are crippling themselves with them, because they do actually have a good game there. They do have good mechanics. They're just ruining it with all this horrendous microtransactions.
Stuff that just makes you not want
Whereas
to pick
Grindstone,
it up and play it,
exactly. So Grindstone has all those, basically the same mechanics. It's just removed all that additional stuff, and it's just great, good fun. It's just good fun to do on your phone for a very short space of time. The levels do not take long at all. You can play it easily on public transport. You can play it easily walking down the street, to be completely honest with you. You know what I mean? Yeah, it's a great little game, honestly. Really, really, really good.
What have you been playing?
Well, Lewis, as you well know, I have started playing the Uncharted series, the Uncharted collection. Now, ladies and gentlemen, you may remember back in, February or March or something like that, I lost a bet to Lewis where I would play all of the Uncharted games as a result of losing this bet. So I've made a start. I've finished the first game. I would classify my enjoyment of it as tepid. It was fine. Honestly, it was fine. The game's old. The game is really old. I think it's nearly 15 years old now, something terrifyingly.
Like that. Yeah, pretty much, yeah.
Or over 10, certainly.
Yeah.
And it kind of showed its age quite a bit in certain aspects. One thing that I did really think would hold up very strongly, because this game was written by Amy Hennig and Neil Druckmann, who are colossus in the video game industry. And I actually thought that a lot of the writing in the game really was quite subpar in certain points, which I thought was quite disappointing. But it's very fun, like it's very actiony and fun in that way, which I am enjoying. As I was saying to you, it's basically Indiana Jones, the video game, without Indiana Jones.
Yeah.
To the point where it's even like hitting Raiders of the Lost Ark beats and things like that along the way. I am having a good time with it. I'm enjoying the second one vastly more than the first one. However, there are still some technical things about it that I think might just be because of its age. Because see, the dodge roll mechanic and cover mechanic, oh my god, they are the bane of my life. And they are both circle. So dodge roll and get into cover is both circle on the D-pad.
So do you end up doing one when you're trying to do the other? Is that what you're saying?
It's more just that these should be two very separate things in my head. I should be able to get into cover and then roll away from it without having to roll into other cover. And you're supposed to hold forward and tap circle in the second game anyway to get out of cover quickly and then just run forward. But I often find that isn't working for me, or I'm maybe holding it very slightly to the left or very slightly to the right, and he's just rolling into other cover. And when you're trying to get away from someone who's thrown 6 grenades at you or something like that, it's very frustrating. It's just a frustrating mechanic in the game. It really, really is. But honestly, I really just do think that is because of how old it is.
Yeah, it's a mark at the time.
So I can forgive that. Like, I really genuinely can forgive that. But the first game, I was sort of comparing it to when I went to go back and play the first Red Dead game before Red Dead 2 came out. And that game had its limitations because of when it was made, basically. It's just an old game. I mean, it's an old game. Old games have limitations. But I was maybe unfairly thinking that it would be as good as that. And that is one of the best games of the generation.
Yeah.
Some would argue one of the best games ever.
Yeah.
So maybe that's unrealistic expectations on my part. But also you pointed out to me as well that the first Uncharted game actually came out in the first year of the PlayStation 3's existence. So maybe in my head, I should be thinking about it more as a souped up PS2 game rather than a kind of generationally solid PS3 game. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
I think that in my head it makes a lot more sense that way. Maybe why it wasn't reaching the expectations that I had set for it.
Mm-hmm. I think that's probably exactly spot on, to be honest. That I think so often when you move away from games like this, you start to just go, that's a PS3 game, rather than thinking about specifically where in a generation it falls. So to think of it more, this is a nice way you put it there, as a souped up PS2 game, I think you can probably see echoes of that writing style and a lot of the technical issues that you're seeing if you go further back rather than further forward, if you know what I mean.
Yeah.
So for me, the Uncharted series really gets stronger as it goes on. I don't think it's a perfect series of games at all by any stretch. I just think it's an entertaining...
Yeah, Nathan Drake is a straight up murder machine.
Yeah, ludonarrative dissonance is a big old issue with that game. Like the contrast between what the game is saying to you is happening and then what you're doing, that's, you know, a very well documented example of that. Like you said there, it's just good fun, and that's a term that we use quite a lot and that a lot of people use around games, and it can get a bit meaningless, but
it doesn't take itself too seriously.
You know,
yeah, it is fun. It doesn't take itself too seriously, which I'm genuinely enjoying because a lot of big AAA games these days, and not least of which Naughty Dog's latest,
exactly.
take themselves very seriously, which isn't necessarily a bad thing. Like, people say that often as if that's some sort of negative, but games that take themselves seriously, some of them are absolutely brilliant. I mean, we were just talking about Red Dead.
Yeah.
That took itself very seriously and it was amazing.
Yeah.
But this doesn't, and it's just quite a fresh take. Like, they're just kind of joking around sometimes, and it does feel, again, very Indiana Jones in that sort of era of films and that sort of era of action as well.
Just a summer blockbuster vibe about it.
Yeah, absolutely, man. So I'm definitely glad that I picked up and started playing it. I must admit, we didn't get off to the hottest of starts. I was quite annoyed about quite a lot of the things that were happening in the first game. The second game, massive improvement already. So I'm very excited to see where that goes.
Good stuff.
Also, footnote, I bought an Xbox One X loose on the cheap. I know, they've got me. They finally got me.
After all this, he's finally gone to the dark side.
There was a fantastic deal though, and that's why I got it. It was a deal that I saw on Eurogamer on Twitter. Maybe we should have retweeted this actually, but because the prices subsequently went back up by £100, but it was a refurbished Xbox One X that was going for £179, which was insanely cheap. So I thought this would be a good Games Pass machine, and even when I'm finished with it and I'm moving on to the Series S more than likely, I can probably just sell that and make about as much money as I paid for it, or maybe slightly less, and by that point I won't really care.
Well, exactly, yeah. If you've got the use of it a bit, and then who cares how much you get back for it?
Yeah. You know? So they've got me. I'm in the ecosystem now. I'm on the Games Pass trail. We'll see how that goes. I've yet to turn it on. And with that, on to the news. All right, and news item number 1, Lewis. Epic versus Apple. There have been yet more developments. This is going to go on for weeks.
Yeah, this is going to be news story every week.
So long. I'm actually determined not to have it as a news story every week, but this could very easily, depending on what both sides of this do, become a news story on a very regular basis. However, Epic has won the injunction against Apple and been granted a temporary restraining order against Apple to stop them retaliating by removing Epic from the Apple developers program. However, the court has upheld that Epic broke Apple's terms and conditions, and Apple may continue to ban Fortnite from the App Store, although that part of it was never really in doubt. This means that Epic will be allowed to access the Apple's developer tools, which is necessary to keep Unreal Engine working on their platform, on the iOS platform, and therefore to keep the games that rely on the Unreal Engine working on that platform. So this is very good news indeed, Lewis. Very good news indeed for developers, certainly, after Apple's, quite frankly, callous attempt to remove the Unreal Engine, threatening the livelihoods of hundreds, if not thousands, of developers who rely on Epic and iOS distribution. What do you think of this?
The fact that Epic won the injunction.
This particular piece of the puzzle, yes. Yeah. What do you think of this?
I mean, as you said, it seems like this outcome from this part of it, which is only a small part of it, seemed fairly unlikely to be in doubt.
Yeah, to be honest with you, this is probably the least in doubt of all of it. When Apple retaliated in that manner, it was very clear that was an illegal move to almost everyone that saw it. So
essentially, Apple there were trying to bully Epic into submitting. It seems to be, right?
Absolutely. That was absolutely what they were trying to do.
And so, it's no surprise that this has been overturned. It's still to be seen what's going to happen in the broader picture around Fortnite in particular. The thing for me here is that Fortnite players still can't play Fortnite on their phones, on any device now. And so the longer this draws on, I think it could become a bigger problem for Epic if players just generally stop paying attention to the court battles and start just thinking, I'm not getting what I want and what I have paid for, essentially, in some cases, if you've been putting money into the game. So there's still miles to go on this. I still think it's a really complex thing. I think there's a lot of really interesting writing out there just now about what both sides have got to lose here and what risks they're taking. But big picture, as you said quite rightly last week, it's for the best if Epic come out of this as the victors, for us as gamers, broadly speaking. So,
for consumers, for developers, the best thing in this situation is for Epic to win.
And certainly this part of it, the fact that they can't be removed from the developer tools, that would have been extraordinarily bad for gamers, for developers, for everyone involved. So that's good.
Also this week, Lewis, Phil Spencer and Xbox have come out in support of Epic and their battle against Apple, basically throwing their full support behind them, which I think is a very interesting move, because I'm sure that if Epic win this and Apple have to open up iOS, Microsoft will be in there with a store in a heartbeat.
Oh, absolutely they will. Of course they will. That's where it all gets really murky still. This is still companies battling over money and how they get to make it. And I still think, and I'm sure you can point out all sorts of reasons why I'm incorrect about this, but I worry that if Microsoft goes down this route of saying, we want that store open, then in time people will make the same arguments about their own stores on their own platforms. I think it's even in some of Apple's statements that could be a potential thing. So it's murky, it's messy. It's great that Microsoft are doing this because, again, it's supporting the cause that we think is the right thing for gamers, but I don't know, I still find the whole thing just completely unedifying, to be honest. Just these colossal companies fighting over this stuff and trying to make us think that it's all about us when it's not really all about us. We're the kind of unintended beneficiaries. Money, So
I actually don't care if Epic win this. It's not really about
Epic
winning it. This could just be made up company X. Like, it's irrelevant that it's Epic. But if Epic do win, then we all benefit. So that's the reason why I care about this. I think a lot of people out there just like to hate on Epic, whether you think that's justified or not, whatever. But in this situation, you as a consumer and as a gamer, and someone who hopefully supports the developers who make and create those games, should be in favour of Epic coming out on top here, regardless of the fact that it's Epic. This would be massively beneficial to everyone as gamers and a lot of people as consumers. Even those who aren't gamers, this would be helpful for. But as far as I'm concerned, this is the first step in the right direction. Alright, and news item number 2. The DC Fandome event has been, and we finally have news on WB Montreal's Gotham Knights and Rocksteady's Suicide Squad. Huzzah! Huzzah! It has been so long. So long, so many leaks, so many rumours, but here we finally are, Liz. Gotham Knights, let's start there because that's how they started. Batman is dead. Bold immediately to make a Batman game without Batman, I've got to say. So the game instead focuses on Robin, Nightwing, Batgirl and Red Hood. The game itself can either be played as a single player game or it can be played on online co-op. There doesn't seem to be any suggestion of local co-op. And it seems that you can only play cooperatively, like you can't play as 4 players, there can only be 2 players playing the game at any one time, despite the fact that there's 4 playable characters, which seems a little strange to me. The Court of Owls are the bad guys, which has been long rumoured and I think was definitely a positive for a lot of fans. It has also been confirmed that this game is not part of the, quotes, Arkhamverse, and that the game will be coming out in 2021. We also got 7 minutes of gameplay as well to go along with this, which was great. Okay, just thoughts in general then. Thoughts in general, Liz.
Glad to finally see it, first off. I mean, this game has been teased for what feels like years, probably literally is years, I think.
I think it is years, genuinely.
And so, it's about time that we got something from it. And like you say, a big, bold move to make. I am sceptical whether or not Batman will truly be dead, but I guess
don't think that there is a hope in hell that Batman will actually be dead. But the fact that you don't play as a Batman in a Batman game is a bold statement.
It is a bold statement. It's an interesting thing for them to have done. I think that the whole role of this game around that Arkhamverse situation is quite interesting because I think this game looks very much like it is a continuation of those games stylistically and in terms of the gameplay that we've seen of it.
I also read immediately after that it was a continuation of the Arkhamverse. I then put out a tweet saying that it was a continuation of the Arkhamverse. Then someone called me on it immediately, which is a good thing about getting things wrong in the internet. You find out just bang, just instantly. And I subsequently went and done some further research, and right enough to the gentleman who I now don't know because I've deleted the tweet. But it's actually not, and it has now been confirmed by WB Montreal that it is not part of the Arkhamverse. This exists separately to the Arkhamverse, but looks exactly like the Arkhamverse, which is very strange.
Like, down to the world itself looks like the Arkham games.
You'd have thought you'd have went for a more distinctive art choice or something.
Exactly. Even the character models. So Mr. Freeze turns up in the trailer. It looks like he's one of the other big bads. That's quite often how the Arkham games worked as well, where there's someone that you think is the bad guy and then there's actually someone else kind of operating over and above that. So that's an interesting parallel. But I looked at the character models between the Arkham version of Mr. Freeze and the trailer version for Gotham Knights, and they're so similar. And obviously it's based on comics and stuff. I find that really interesting because I wonder to what extent they've gone, we want to lean on the Arkham games, but we do want to do our own thing. So it's going to look similar, but have a slightly more neon-y colour palette as well. And we're going to foreground these 4 characters that weren't a huge part of the Arkham games. But in terms of gameplay, I think it looks interesting. It looks like they've put some new kind of RPG elements into it. You see XP meters coming up on screen and kind of number.
Yeah, I wasn't mad keen on that.
I'm not mad keen on it either, and I heard someone else refer to the way that Wolfenstein Youngblood introduced a lot of that stuff to a game that really didn't need it, and there's just a visual echo there. Even.
Yeah, it's just graphical noise that you do not need largely.
And it just hints at a kind of grindy game that is not necessarily what I'm looking for from the Arkham series, which this isn't, but
Well, it's a very similar parallel to the Arkham series. Let's not pretend that they're going to be vastly different, because even that combat, as someone who's only very briefly played the Arkham games at all, looked very, very similar indeed. What I would say from that gameplay is that I thought that it looked very current gen for a game that's going to be coming out in 2021, and the reason for that is because it's coming out in PS4 and Xbox One as well,
right?
Which makes me think that it's going to be probably Q1 2021. I would have thought no later than halfway through the year. In terms of what you were saying about it being grindy, obviously that comes along with the online element, I think, and the fact that you can play the game single player. Like Marvel's Avengers, you can go about and you can definitely play that single player. I mean, it's 100% an online game, but you can play it by yourself if you want.
Yeah.
It's such an incredibly fine line to walk. It rarely gets done well, where you have a game that you can play online that is basically focused on playing it as an online co-op game, that the single player feels like a single player game. Do you know what I mean? Mm-hmm. I'm not sure that it's going to do it. WB Games have a bad track record recently of things like microtransactions and stuff like that, particularly going back to the Shadow of Mordor stuff and all that. Do you know what I mean? I hope that they can pull this off, but honestly, I initially watched the trailer. I thought, this is great, they're making some really bold choices and whatever. Then I watched the trailer again, then I watched the gameplay again, and I was thinking, do you know what? I'm not actually very sure about this. I'm not sure how well this is going to function as a single player game.
Interesting. I could see it going either way, essentially. I really hope that they do make that single player version land, because that's what I want. I don't really want a big online co-op multiplayer thing. And you can see that you could essentially just have technique swaps. You could basically have the same story play out, and all you're doing is choosing which character build. If you think about them like that, which character build do you want to drop in here? Do you want the slightly more acrobatic one, the slightly more gadgety one? Shouldn't really matter, and that should work as a single player thing. But you're totally right. I mean, like The Division, which sort of didn't play up the idea that it was a single player game, but was possible, but was actually really not good to play single player. And
that's the thing, is that the game was so focused on being an online experience, which is 100% what The Division should have been. Yeah. But they did say, oh yeah, you can definitely play this single player. But I tried basically to play it a bit single player.
Me
it's
too.
Crap. It's 100% not what the game's designed for. You're going completely against the design philosophies of the game, and you wouldn't expect that to work. Do you know what I mean? So that's why I'm saying it's a very fine line to walk. I genuinely hope that they pull it off, though, like 100% do. Alright, Liz, after that, of course, was Suicide Squad as well. We only got a cinematic trailer for this, but from the cinematic trailer, it seems that you can play as Harley Quinn, Deadshot, Captain Boomerang, and King Shark. And Superman has been brainwashed by a gentleman by the name of Brainiac into being evil, into being all sorts of evil, and then they need to go and kill them, and then it's like, kill the Justice League. Which makes me think, is it just kill Superman, or is it kill the Justice League? How many more Justice League characters are going to be in this? For example, is Batman going to be in this game? Which would be very interesting indeed. However, as I basically just implied there, this is in the Arkhamverse, despite not being a Batman game, but as a continuation of Rocksteady's Arkhamverse. The game is going to be coming out in 2022, which will make it 6 years since the last time Rocksteady released a game, which is a very, very long time. It's a very, very long time, considering the game that they were working on was so secret for so long.
Yeah.
And only now are we getting only a cinematic trailer. How do you feel about this?
More interested than I thought I was going to be, if I'm totally honest. After we found out what it was, when they gave that fairly rubbish final teaser just before DC Fandome, I've got to say, it made me think of the Avengers game. It didn't make me think that it was anything I was particularly interested in, because I don't really care about the Suicide Squad as an idea.
No, I definitely care less about the Suicide Squad characters than I do about the Arkham characters,
Yeah.
like 100%.
Exactly that. And yeah, nothing going into this trailer made me think like I'm going to be dying to play this. But I thought, as a stylistic change from the Arkham games, it seems a bit more fun, a bit more
it was genuinely
a lot
brighter.
comedic, brighter, and just had a different tone about it. There's guns and that kind of action in it now, which obviously Batman doesn't really mess around with, and so something about all of that just made me go, oh, okay, there's something different about this from it just being another Arkham game, but with Suicide Squad characters in it. Beyond that, though, I mean, I wouldn't be surprised in this latest if this game is later than 2022, because we are only seeing a short cinematic, no real indication of what the game is.
Well, speaking on that point, now that we've seen the online component of Arkham Knights, do you really think that Suicide Squad is going to have anything less than that?
Less than what Gotham Knights is doing?
Yeah. Like, do you think that this will just be a solely single-player narrative? Because I think there is almost zero chance of that.
No, I don't think there'll be that. I mean, I think it'll probably be quite similar, that there'll be some balance of the two things. Didn't they say that you can play as the squad solo, but you can switch between characters? I feel like
I think that's right. I think that you can do that.
So it's going to be some sort of hybrid in the same way. I think we're at an interesting point where these games of service, squad-based mechanics have become kind of normalised in the same way that like RPG skill trees and that kind of thing have become normalised and part of a lot of different types of games.
Yeah.
Where we're just going to see different studios play with the idea of having multiple character options, multiple playthrough options, whether that's single player, co-op, multiplayer online. So I'm kind of open to the idea of a lot of that, but I just really hope that it's kind of what you said there was really interesting, that it's baked into the design philosophy of the game and that they stick by that they put out a game that actually has a coherent vision about what it's trying to be and isn't just you can do everything, you can do this, you can do that, whatever one you want you can do. Yeah, it's like, what is it, the one that you're actually making? Tell us that and be honest about it, you know?
Yeah, no, I totally agree. I kind of wish that the Marvel's Avengers games would just do that. Like, I kind of wish that they would just say, look, you can play this single player, but this is very much focused on multiplayer, whereas saying, no, you can definitely play this single player, it'll be just as good that way and whatever, which is very much the yarn they seem to be spinning there. But I think it's very clear to everyone watching that no, this is very much an online focused game, very, very clearly. And I don't want it to be that. If it does turn out being that, okay, that's fine. That's not what I want from that game, but okay. I just really want a single player game. I really just want a single, whether it be Gotham Knights that works, or whether they can manage this co-op system with a single player narrative. Like, I would be totally fine with that. Like, I have no problem with that whatsoever if it works, but that is a big if for me. And again, I think because we are talking about Rocksteady and because we're talking about how we are both at least semi-excited for this game, I think it would be remiss of us not to mention the ongoing sexual misconduct allegations that are going on there. So last week we mentioned that in 2018 Rocksteady had received a letter from 10 of their only 16 female employees highlighting sexual misconduct and asking the company for action. This largely went ignored outside of a 1-hour training session, it was claimed. Another letter then seems to have been sent to Rocksteady from the female members of staff after this had all been brought up again, so maybe in the last week. And in response to that and the original letter, I suppose, Rocksteady have made this statement on Twitter.
In 2018, we received a letter from some of our female staff detailing issues they faced at Rocksteady at that time. We took it as a call to action. This week, some of the women of Rocksteady issued their own statement regarding the situation, and we support our colleagues. In response to the initial communication, we met with all our female staff, we listened and we dealt with the issues raised. All formal complaints were thoroughly investigated, addressed appropriately, and a number of serious measures were taken in response to the issues that were surfaced, including discipline or termination of staff. Since then, we've introduced new ways of ensuring we are making good on our commitment to inclusion, such as asking all female staff to provide feedback about the portrayal and behaviour of characters in the games we make. We are dedicated to listening and improving and have employed specialists to help further enhance equity and representation at Rocksteady. We continue to learn and we are working diligently to increase the ways we support everyone. We want to know if there are issues that have not been raised through our normal channels so we can address them. As such, we've engaged the services of an independent third party to confidentially speak with all employees at Rocksteady who wish to do so. We will also be reaching out to every former female employee who left in the past 2 years to ask them to speak to the interviewers. Right now, we are as passionate as ever about creating an inclusive culture, and we are listening carefully. We are determined to stand up for our staff and stand firmly against any unacceptable behaviour.
So Rocksteady says that it is addressing these things, quotes, appropriately. And then they mention that even people might have got sacked and whatever. But my response to that would be is, no, you've not, if all the female staff still don't feel as though they are safe in their workplace or they're not going to get harassed in their workplace. So you've not dealt with anything, you've just sacked the guys. It's not, that's not changing the culture at all. To be honest with you, this is a wee bit of a bullshit statement, really. Like, it's a wee bit word salad.
Well, yeah, and it's always, these things always are, and there's definitely a sense of trying to say that there's no blame to be had, but then also going on to say, we're putting in place this third-party review, which indicates that there is a problem. So.
Yeah, that very much indicates there's a problem. And my response to that would be, okay, that's good that you're doing that. That is a good action that you're taking there. Why didn't it happen in 2018?
Well, exactly, yeah.
And they're also saying that they are like committed to inclusion, or I can't remember what it was that they said precisely, but that they want to have an inclusive company. But in 2018, they had 16 female employees out of over 200.
Is that? I've never known what their number of staff is. Is that?
I believe I have a Eurogamer article, which we will post links to over in the show notes at PlayersToo.com, that said it was like 230 something employees, and they had my apologies, they had 230 odd employees today. But in 2018, they only had 16 female members of staff. So unless that's went up by a factor of 10, that really is pretty pathetic, really. So I'm not really sure how you can go on about inclusion where you're running the biggest sausage fest in the world over there. I mean, quite genuinely, you need more diversity than that in an office. Yeah. That is crazy. Yeah. That is crazy.
And it does show in some of their older games, there are a lot of fairly hypersexualized female characters.
Well, that's what they were saying as well in their statement about some of the characters, and that they would consult their female members of staff about their female characters, because they don't have enough females to be on the team that are creating these characters in the first place. That's crazy. That's absolutely. It's not as if women don't want to work in the video games industry. It just seems shocking to me that 16 out of over 200 employees. That's pathetic. That's absolutely pathetic. Yeah, if you're going to do something about your diversity and really preach inclusion, then you have to change that in a big, big way, Rocksteady. All right then, and news item number 3. More turmoil over Halo Infinite. Rumour has it that Xbox are considering dropping the Xbox One version of Halo Infinite following its delay. This is according to a, quotes, mod-verified reset error user called Sponger, who has apparently been previously accurate about leaks and games in the past, particularly on the Xbox side. Sponger has claimed that the current version of Halo Infinite on the Xbox One can't even run at 1080p, which is real bad considering this game was supposed to be coming out allegedly in a couple of months, and that they are having serious issues with asset loading, which again, really not good considering this game was supposed to come out in a few months. He goes on to claim that the proposed changes would be at the engine level, and that they would also make ray tracing default and improve the geometry for the Xbox Series X, presumably, and those are, the ray tracing alone is something that the Xbox Series S simply cannot think about supporting. And as well, the Xbox have not ruled out delaying the game beyond 2021, which is massive. And apparently the reason for this is because they are convinced that they need to make the best Halo game ever. That is a quote from him. So, Lewis, if this is true, it just proves to me that Xbox are completely willing to go back on the promise made that all their games on the Series X would be compatible with the current generation of consoles. This is something that they already started walking back, as far as I'm concerned, in their Games Showcase. Yeah. And also, if this is true, it also goes to show that Xbox, quite frankly, lied about the fact that developing for a current gen and next gen console does obviously hamper the games. Obviously it does. If you are supposed to be building a game for the next gen, that can't look as good as it possibly could be if it's still got to run on an Xbox One S. We've been saying this for months. But Phil Spencer and the people at Xbox have continually said, no, all these things scale up nicey, and it'll all be great, and nobody has to worry about a thing. And they made that statement. They must have made that statement. They absolutely must have made that statement, knowing what 343 were going through with this Halo design. On top of that, if the game is in the state that they showed off, which quite frankly was not very good, why did they show us it? Why did they continue to say this will be a launch title for the Xbox Series X? I just don't understand it, because this game is clearly nowhere near ready. This game could use another year, as it turns out. More than a year, apparently, if this is true. And to be honest with you, it rings true.
Yeah, I think there's something in that. I'm keen to stress as well that this is a rumour, and
this is 100% a rumour. This is 100% a rumour, and we are speculating upon that.
Yeah, and I think there's something in your question there of, why would they have continually said these things, and why would they have shown us it, which maybe hints that it's not totally true, or that at least that the problems that 343 are facing have only become apparent laterally. I still think before they showed us it, because there's no way you get to the point of cutting together a demo of that and putting it out. And, Major Nelson said that Phil Spencer gets the final say on what goes into that show. He looks at all of it and decides how it all plays together. And so if there were issues, he surely knew about them, and they still stuck with that line and they still put it out. So there's no way that game got into that showcase without him and others being aware of the problems it was facing. So there's some truth in this, if not the whole of it is true. It's a fucking mess, Mark. That's a long way of getting to that.
To be honest with you, it really is, mate. This game is turning into a shambles. It's turning into a bit of a joke. And that's shit. That's really fucking shit. I wanted Xbox to succeed in this. I know people might not believe me in that, but I really wanted Xbox to succeed in this. I've just bought an Xbox One X, Lewis. I was looking forward to playing Halo Infinite on it. Potentially that's not going to happen now. And the more that this goes on, and the more that the things that they said 6 months ago, 9 months ago come undone, not only does it make them out to be untrustworthy, it makes them out to look stupid. Like, it makes them out to look really bad.
Yeah, or that they think that we're stupid and that no one in the gaming sphere would be challenging any of this, or saying, how could
but
that
everyone
be
was
true?
challenging it.
Yeah,
everyone was challenging it.
A lot of people were, and a lot of people still are. And I think it's that, like you say, that this game, I wouldn't want to say go as far as saying it's become a joke, but it's become, I think, a bit of a PR headache.
That meme has become a joke
of Craig, the guy that they showed. Yeah, it's not good. There's no getting around that. But I think that more than it becoming a joke, it's become a big PR problem for Xbox, which they have to basically address now, because there's not that long until that. I mean, we know that console's coming in November, categorically, unless that gets delayed as well. I mean, effectively now we're in September for all intents and purposes, so that gives you 2 months to sort out this messaging before that console launches. And at some point in all that 2 months, you've also got to probably announce Series S. You've got to announce the pricing. You've got to do all the pre-order stuff and all that. So that window is actually smaller than 2 months. They've got probably about a month to start getting some of this. What is your launch lineup? What games are featured? What games can you play depending on what systems you have? If you've decided not to pre-order an Xbox Series X because of everything that they've said about games being scalable back down to the One X that you already own, what are you supposed to do as a gamer? Are you saving money? Are you waiting a year?
Yeah, the message is so muddled at this point. You'll attest to this as well. A year ago, I was singing from the heavens about how well Xbox were doing. But at some point they had to deliver on all those things that they were saying, and now my attitude is completely soured towards them. Like, it really has, because I thought that everything that they were saying was so good and so consumer focused, and was basically telling us everything that we wanted to hear. And then they've slowly crept it all back. Do you know what I mean? And the reality is not what was promised at this point at all. If this turns out to be true, again, this is a rumour, but if this turns out to be true, that I think that would be really, really bad for Xbox. Really bad. All right, news item number 4. More rumours, Lewis, but this time they are of the good kind. We might very well be getting an upgraded Switch in 2021, apparently. This in a Bloomberg article titled Nintendo Plans Upgraded Switch Console and Major Games for 2021. It seems that the Switch might be getting a 4K screen and additional computing power, at the very least, because there is a laundry list of things that I would want on the Switch, quite frankly, if they were upgrading the model. But even if it was just a 4K screen and additional computing power, I'd probably still buy one. In terms of hardware as well, you have to realise that the Switch right now can't even compete with the PS4 and the Xbox One. So when the PS5 and the Series X comes out, it's just going to be left in the dust by quite a distance, I would have thought. And then when Breath of the Wild 2 comes out, Are we still talking about that as a Game of the Year contender when PlayStation and Xbox are showing off what their fancy dancy new consoles can do? Do you know what I mean? That's a bit farcical, because I definitely think it absolutely will be in that category. But do you know what I mean? Like, the more and more that we move into the next generation, and the more and more that the Switch stays on its current, already behind the times hardware, that conversation is going to grow, and the Switch will continue to struggle to keep up with the pace that the new generation of consoles can. Not that I necessarily think that Switch are competing on those terms, because they are immensely popular anyway, of course, and I wouldn't stop playing mine. But in terms of like the best of the best games, like, can you then get that on a Switch when you're in the face of these new pieces of hardware from Xbox and PlayStation that are rivaling high-end PCs? In terms of the major games, though, I think that was very interesting, because we are in a drought of Nintendo games list. There is absolutely fuck all going on, which has been a little frustrating this year, because outside of Animal Crossing, which was an absolutely colossus, of course it was, and helped massively by the situation around the pandemic, although that sounds quite dark to say, but it definitely was. It definitely was. So, are Nintendo holding off things like the new Bayonetta, Metroid Prime 4, the potentially made-up Metroid trilogy remakes, things like that? Breath of the Wild 2 itself, like, is that what they're waiting for? The Mario remakes, are they waiting for this new piece of hardware next year and then launching with this crescendo of amazing new games?
Potentially, it's one explanation as to what's going on with Nintendo's silence. I think that there's quite a lot of separate threads there. So, plain and simply, yes, if this console, this upgraded Switch, is real, which seems hard to think that it wouldn't be now.
We knew that there was rumours back last year that they were going to be releasing 2 new Switches. There was going to be a Lite version, which we got, which is called the Switch Lite, and then there was going to be a, quotes, Pro version, which looks as if it's going to be this upgraded version.
And so if that turns out to be real, then absolutely they will be holding certain announcements for that, or certain games will launch at its release, and they don't need the same build-up that the next-gen consoles have for that. I mean, they could announce that with quite a short window and say, you know, Breath of the Wild 2 is coming out with that, and it's all happening next month. I'm not saying that they would do that, but I don't think you keep all of those games, though. And I think that they will face the same problem there that we kind of were just touching on with Xbox, where if I don't upgrade my Switch, but I did buy a Switch, and I want all the games that are coming to the Switch, then Breath of the Wild 2 and all those other things still have to be able to run on that, okay? So where does that divide come, you know?
But the thing is that Breath of the Wild, for amazing as it was, like, the pop-in on that game was absolutely horrendous. The draw distances were not good at all, and these are all like limitations of the hardware. And it would be things like that that would improve. It would be visual more than anything. It wouldn't necessarily take the Switch from being the PS4 to the PS5. You know what I mean? It's not that jump.
Absolutely not.
It's like the PS4 to the PS4 Pro, or the Xbox One to the Xbox One X. That is the sort of jump we're looking at here. So it would definitely still have to run on the original Switch. I'm not saying...
And the Lite as well.
And the Lite, yeah. I'm not saying for a second that your old Switch would become redundant, but it would be as relevant as the PS4 Pro is. It would be as relevant as the Xbox One X is to the Xbox One. So yeah, I have no problem with this upgrade in the slightest. Definitely not. All right, and finishing off as we always do with a couple of shout outs. Shout out number 1 was Battletoads has come out this week, and the reception was lukewarm at best, I will say. It's currently sitting at a 73 on Metacritic for the Xbox and a 72 on PC, and actually those scores were up from the initial scores, which saw it down as low as I think it was a 68 it was down as low as, but it has brought itself back up. It's just initially when a game comes out and you see that it's in the 6s, that's like, that's really not good to see at all. Although, admittedly, the game is divisive. Some people seem to think that it's just dumb, good fun, and people really like it, people who are particularly fans of the original game, and some people think it's really dumb and not fun. It seems to be the other side of that coin. I don't think it's going to go down as an Xbox classic, unfortunately. And honestly, if you're looking for a side-scrolling beat-em-up game that is a revival of a beloved franchise, I'd really recommend Streets of Rage 4.
Which is also available on Game Pass.
Available on Game Pass. There you go. All right, shout out number 2. Rumours on rumours. Rumour has it that Ubisoft are making a Prince of Persia remake. The leak has come from a Guatemalan retailer called Max, which showed a posting for the Switch and PS4 versions of the remake. And this has all but been confirmed on Twitter by Jason Schreier after the fact, just in case you were thinking, oh, well, it's Guatemala. No, this is very, very real, and it very much looks as if this is going to be happening. It remains to be seen whether this is going to be a remake of the OG Prince of Persia, whether this is going to be a remake of the Sands of Time Prince of Persia, or whether this is going to be a remake of the 2008 Prince of Persia. There's no information at all on this. If I had to guess, I would have said the Sands of Time. But whether or not it's all three games or just the first Sands of Time game, I don't know. But then you pointed out something really interesting about the 2008 game.
Yeah, well, it seems like the logo that's seen in the leak is very similar, if not identical, to the logo from that 2008 game. So it's, I mean, like you say, it's impossible to know really right now which version of all of this we're going to get. I'm totally in your camp. We both adored the Sands of Time trilogy, and I really hope that it is. That feels like the one that there would be the most fan base for.
God, it would make so much sense.
And
please give it to me.
And therefore the one that would make them the most money. I certainly didn't have a lot of love for the 2008 game.
Nor did I, really, to be honest.
And I know that some people do, and for a lot of people they find that a great game, and absolutely fair enough. And if it ends up being that, I'll definitely take a look at it still. But for me, a remake of one, if not all three of those Sands of Times games would be just
incredible.
Superb, yeah.
Absolutely amazing. Alright, shout out number 3. Ubisoft Collector's Editions will no longer come with a physical copy of the games, but only on Xbox, and seemingly only in the UK. Or at least the physical copies will also be coming to North America. Some of these collector's editions are knocking on the door of 200 quid, to give you an idea, and this will apply to the collector's editions of Assassin's Creed Valhalla, Far Cry 6, Watch Dogs Legion, and presumably any other upcoming Ubisoft game. And all of them will come with a digital download code and not a physical copy of the game. The fact that this is only Xbox and seemingly only applies to the UK, this is weird as fuck. What's that about?
It's very, very strange,
so strange
story. Yeah, we sort of saw this break earlier, and just like you say, it's quite baffling to the point where you think either it's a mistake or there's some bigger piece of news around all this to come that it will be announced that it's actually going to be on in way more territories. But yeah, I mean, to be paying that amount of money for anything is completely absurd to me. But obviously, some people adore these things, and I'm sure a lot of people who adore those things don't actually care that much about the disc itself.
It's about the merch, yeah.
Yeah, it's about the merch.
But usually it comes in like a big fancy case or something like that, like a metal case or whatever, you know?
I just think if you're paying all that money and you're obviously a super fan, it's kind of, it's a bit like being a record collector. You probably will still listen to an album on your phone on Spotify, but you want the vinyl, you don't just want the sleeve, you know what I mean? And that's kind of what this feels like to me. It's like if you're paying for all of that, then you want all of it. You don't want all of it but a little card with a number on it, you know?
Yeah. No, I totally get it. Yeah, you are kind of dicking over your hardest of hardcore fans.
Core fans, yeah.
Yeah, very strange, very strange. Alright, and shout out number 4. Call of Duty has released a trailer for the new Black Ops Cold War, and there has been leaks subsequent to that have given us a lot of information lists. But the trailer, in true Call of Duty fashion, has been controversial immediately, just immediately controversial. This is over footage of Tiananmen Square, which subsequently got the trailer banned in China because China are totalitarian. And the footage subsequently got cut from the trailer, and the trailer was replaced worldwide because of the actions of China. So I'll ask you about that in a second. But the leaks have come from a data mine, which have apparently revealed a hell of a lot about what is going to be happening with this game, including the release date, which is apparently November the 13th, which might give us some indication of when the new consoles are coming out. And that the multiplayer is going to be getting revealed on September the 9th, and that it is a direct sequel to Black Ops 1 as well. But there is a whole bunch of other stuff. Like, if you're really interested, there's a Twitter account called Modern Warzone, which had a lot of this information on it. Again, we'll put links to the tweets over on PlayersToo.com as well, if anyone's interested. But the censorship of that trailer, that's wild.
Yeah, it's wild. It's also not a surprise in a sense, you know, that's just the world that we live in right now, that if you prod China's going to prod back, and so yeah.
And then you fold like a deck of cards.
Well, I wonder what the what's the rationale for that? Why take it away worldwide? Why not just cut that scene out of the trailer in China, replace that bit of footage? I've not seen the trailer, I should say, so I don't know how all that plays out, but yeah, bizarre.
Really, really strange. I really don't know why you would take it away from the whole world when it's just a very specifically China problem.
Yeah, it's also a very famous footage from around the world. Everyone
extremely
knows
famous.
That. Yeah,
extremely famous footage.
Who are you hiding it from?
All right, Liz. And on that note, time for a beer, and we'll be back with Topic of the Week. And we are back for Topic of the Week. Topic of the Week this week is Gamescom. and what we would like to see there. Although, having said that, I wrote that title before Jeff Keighley went on a tweeting spree of telling us what was going to be there. So this is basically just going to be a discussion of the things that we would like to see and that we were maybe expecting to see at Gamescom. But Jeff Keighley has told us that we are getting a Ratchet & Clank demo, that we're getting Fall Guys Season 2, that we're getting a Call of Duty Black Ops Cold War announcement, we're getting Destiny 2 Beyond Light, we're getting World of Warcraft Shadowlands, we're getting Doom Eternal Ancient Gods DLC, we're getting Little Nightmares 2, which is a cool little indie game, and we are getting Medal of Honor Above and Beyond, which is the Medal of Honor VR game. So we know all that's coming. Clearly, for me, the headline there, Ratchet & Clank, surely.
Absolutely, yeah. So just to clarify, this is what is being announced for Opening Night Live, which is this Thursday.
Yes. My apologies. Gamescom is usually an enormous event that is held over, 4 days or something like that?
Yeah.
But Opening Night Live is the big showcase to start off everything.
And it was originally announced as the kind of finale to Keighley's Summer Game Fest as well.
Yeah,
so
right enough.
It's been building up to this. So you're totally right. Of those things that he's told us so far, I think he's also said there's 30 announcements in total, but not all new announcements by any stretch. A lot of games that we've already seen, just getting updates for. So of the things that he said already, Ratchet & Clank is obviously the standout. It seems like it's going to be a longer version of the gameplay that we saw during the PS5 showcase, which is really cool because there was a lot hinted at and suggested about the game from that. And I at the time, I think on our discussion about it even was saying, like, I want to know more about how the kind of temporal dimension shifting stuff is going to work, because you see it happen in cinematics in that trailer in a way that you don't necessarily see it in its fullest extent in the gameplay. So I want to see more of that. I think that would be
definitely
great if we get a good look at
that's
that.
a very next gen mechanic, so I definitely want to see that. I'm just happy to see more gameplay of it as well. Totally. I thought that it looked absolutely fantastic, quite frankly. I thought that it looked really, really good indeed. So very, very much looking forward to that. The only other standout here, I would say for me, well, Doom Eternal DLC, that's awesome. If you're still playing Doom and you want more Doom, go and get the DLC. Yeah. Doom is amazing. But Little Nightmares 2 is also an indie game that's definitely caught my eye. I didn't play the first game, but it's making me want to play it a lot, so I'm keen to see whatever they're showing off as well.
Nice.
So on to games that we might see again, Lewis, right? So I've written down a whole list of games here, but the ones that are standing out to me as games we might see again and that I want to see again are 2 from Xbox, which are The Median and Everwild, hopefully with more information on Everwild, because we still have very, very little on that. And for the PS5, Kena, The Bridge of the Spirits, and Returnal. I think I would really like to see more from them if they're going to be early release titles from both of the major consoles, you know?
I think those are good picks. To be honest, until Keighley himself said that Ratchet & Clank was going to be in this, I didn't really think that we would see all that much directly from Xbox and PlayStation, so the fact that that's there is an indication that we really might get more. And I know Gears 5, I think a story trailer was shown last year, so there is obviously an Xbox connection there. I think those are good shouts. I think Everwild would be amazing. Feels like it fits in to this, because I think a lot of the games we're going to see are going to be AA titles, a lot of indie games, as well as 1 or 2.
Well, they have a whole indie showcase as part of Opening Night Live, yeah.
And similarly, Kena feels like it's just kind of made for this kind of showcase. It doesn't get to stand on its own 2 feet within a big PS5 showcase necessarily, but here is an opportunity to show it in a bit more detail, get some eyes on it. I think those are great shouts. I would love to see more of Returnal. That feels like a longer shot to me for some. I don't know what something inside is just telling me that game's a bit further off maybe, but I again would absolutely love to see it.
The other big one that I was thinking about from the 2 showcases of Xbox and PlayStation was Demon's Souls.
Wow.
Actual gameplay.
Yeah, I mean, that would be incredible. And just maybe, I mean, it's, again, the right kind of place to show it off to a huge audience, but I wonder if that's the kind of game that Sony will want to sit on themselves, you know, foreground that in their own showcase down the line, because there's still got to be some major PS5 and Xbox Series X showcases to come. I think we might see more of things like the Pathless that we saw just in the most recent state of play.
Definitely.
Games like that we've got a little bit of and that have maybe been elaborated on slightly, but there's been so many showcases this year, it's hard. It really is. A lot of games have been shown quite a bit, so like The Medium, as you said, we've seen that game twice already. It's hard to imagine that they want to show us too much more until it's kind of coming out, but hopefully we'll get some major hits there.
Well, what about another PlayStation exclusive, or launch exclusive, we'll say, not total exclusive, but Oddworld Soulstorm, I think is a good shout.
That would be so fantastic. Yeah, I would love to see it. That feels kind of right for this as well. That game has been developed for so long now, and yeah,
really, really small team working on it as well, really tight team. Other games that have kind of been in the zeitgeist as well as maybe this will turn up was Overwatch 2, which we've not heard a lot about in ages, actually, and Resident Evil Village.
Yeah, I could see an expansion on that. I guess that's the thing, is what studios will use this as an attempt to get more of a push than they've had already from all of these showcases. Resident Evil Village absolutely is one of those that's been shown a little, basically just that initial cinematic that we saw, right? There's not really any more details around that, although typically for Resident Evil there's a ton of leaks and rumours around it. Overwatch 2 feels like a great shout. I'd forgotten we were even expecting that. That's how long it feels like.
We're not really tuned into that, to be completely honest with you.
That's fair, yeah, certainly.
When I was kind of trying to get a kind of feel for this, I was kind of diving about on Reddit just to see if there was any threads about predictions or whatever. And one that I did find, a lot of people were thinking we should see Overwatch 2 here. It just feels like the time. It feels like we're due something more on that, you know?
Totally see that. I think we're likely to see, not that we haven't seen kind of a fair bit already, but a lot of the stuff that has been shown off during Summer Game Fest. So particularly I'm thinking about Crash Bandicoot 4. I think that there's a strong chance that that'll be here. And similarly, the Tony Hawk's remake,
that's a good shout as well, man.
I mean, I know there's such an obvious connection there about Keeley having done the Summer Game Fest stuff, and he did a lot of those showcases during that for those games. But it just feels like, again, this is a way that you would pull them in front of a big old audience, and it might just be another little story trailer or a cinematic for them. But we've not really seen anything from that Tony Hawk game, or not too much, right? I think there's just been
we've not seen too much. There's been a demo, and we've definitely seen gameplay.
Yeah. But you want to get that big bombastic musical trailer for that game.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah, get that awesome soundtrack in there as well and really show the game off. Like, definitely, without a shadow of a doubt. I think that's a good shout as well, definitely. Moving on to Nintendo. Just Nintendo as a whole category by themselves.
They've got to show up somewhere, don't they?
Well, yeah. I mean, right. Don't they? So I've written down here, Metroid Prime 4, Metroid Trilogy Remake, Mario Remakes, Skyward Sword Remake, Breath of the Wild 2, a new Smash character. What are the chances on any of that?
I mean, I would love to say that a lot of that was likely. My gut is saying a Smash character if we're lucky, and I hate that. I hate that feels like what might happen. What's your take there? Do you think we'll see more of those?
I think that they're going to have one big announcement, and I think it will only be literally an announcement. There will be one thing. Due to the Skyward Sword remake leak happening very, very recently, I wouldn't be surprised if it were that, and then they say it comes out in October. I can see something like that happen personally. Yeah. Because now that we might be getting the upgraded Switch, I've sort of convinced myself that they want 2021 to be a really big year for them, even though it's also going to be a really, really big year for PlayStation and Xbox. And I suppose you can debate about how good that is tactically or not, I suppose. But of all of that, and I suppose you can throw Bayonetta 3 in there as well, I think that the most likely thing that we would get there is either Bayonetta 3, because that has just been gone since it was initially announced, basically, or Skyward Sword Remake. That's my gut feeling.
I think Bayonetta, now that you've said that has a ring of truth about it. It's about time we saw it. It feels like it again.
Oh man, we're way 6 months past we managed to do it.
And I think that it's the kind of game that has a broad following, or a big following rather, but also it's broadly known. It's a franchise that people are aware of, even if they don't play it necessarily.
Oh yeah, totally.
Kind of where you want to position it. Whereas,
sexy lady with guns in her feet.
Well, exactly. And I just think that again, Nintendo will keep their biggest big hitters, i.e., those Mario remakes, Breath of the Wild 2,
for their own directs,
for their own showcases. Skyward Sword is interesting because obviously that could all just be nonsense, and I do think that maybe that's going to launch with the Switch Pro, for want of a better name, and Breath of the Wild 2 will be much later next year or even into 2022. Who knows?
Well, I think that if we are going to get a Switch Pro, it's going to be Christmas next year. So that's when I'm imagining that's going to be. So that's when I think Breath of the Wild 2 is going to be, and maybe some of these games on the run up to that or around that as well. That's what I'm picturing in my head. Indies then, Liz. Indies. So again, I'm going to say 4 indies to you, which I think, or I hope more than anything that we're going to see. Hollow Knight is there, obviously. It's going to be, I'm going to say at every single showcase until it turns out to be true. I know. It's going to be barely disappointing, I'm aware. Cuphead DLC, 12 minutes. Empire of Sin, which was shown at Gamescom last year, if you remember correctly.
I mean, again, they all feel like games that could definitely use this platform. Taking Hollow Knight and Cuphead as almost as one thing. I still think that if Cuphead was ready to do anything, it would have been part of one of the Xbox showcases over the last wee while. I find it so strange to think that they would move that here, but maybe. And Hollow Knight, I mean, yeah, it's surely got to be. We've got to know something about Silksong soon, but I just feel like it's been missed so many times now that
I know.
But I really hope for your sake, if for no one else's, that it is there, because I mean, it'd be fantastic to see it. And again, this platform, a lot of people are going to be watching this. Gamescom is, if you've never watched it, you might not be aware of it. It doesn't have the name that E3 has, but it is a huge event, and so
it's bigger than E3 in terms of like the amount of people that go there. Like, magnitude is bigger, in fact.
Totally, and so the amount of people who are going to be watching this online instead this year is still going to be massive. So a game like Hollow Knight I would think would be determined to get that up there. Empire of Sin, I would fucking love to see, man. I'm really excited about that game. I just want to know more about it. I want to see more of it. It's kind of gone a bit quiet recently. 12 Minutes similarly. Like, these are just all games that have been in the ether for so long now that I feel like we need to get more of. There's also,
I want some dates, Lewis. I want some dates.
Yeah. I mean, that's the kind of thing. What sorts of announcements do you think you're going to get around these
I'm
things?
literally talking about seeing any of these games at this point. That is literally what I'm talking about. Even back to the other games that we were saying, whether it be just another trailer, whether it be some gameplay, I don't think for the next gen stuff we're going to get any hard dates at all until the consoles are properly announced. But I suppose that maybe brings us on neatly to the next thing I was going to ask. Do you think that we see anything from the consoles in terms of price, date, UI, features, anything?
Wow. I think for the vast majority of those things, no. I can imagine Xbox doing something there.
Well, they have the connection with Keighley. They obviously launched or first showed off the Series X at the Game Awards last year. Yep. So they have a connection there, definitely. Yeah,
absolutely. And Xbox and Phil Spencer have shown that they are not afraid to kind of be everywhere. Whereas Sony have absolutely gone down the route of, we're going to do our one big showcase and we're going to do our state of play the next month, and have kept a lot of stuff very much in-house. Phil Spencer has been on every showcase just about all summer. Is he taking a day off? Who knows? So, yeah, I could totally see some Xbox stuff here. Whether that's... I don't think we'll get price at this. I don't think it's the right event for that. I think they just showed off the UI recently. I might be wrong about that.
I'm not sure, to be honest.
I think I saw something about it that it's just very similar to the Xbox One's UI.
Really?
Don't quote me on that 100%.
That's interesting if that's true, because I know that a lot of people don't like it.
Yeah. Again, I don't necessarily think that kind of stuff, but... I mean, is there any chance we're going to get the Series S announcement here? It was long rumoured to be an August thing.
I was just going to ask that. That is what I think we might get from the consoles, is that we might actually see the Series S here, and that might be my bold prediction for the whole show, is that we might finish off the show, and one more thing, Big Phil walks out, here's the Xbox Series S.
Oh, wow. I mean, that would be something.
That'd be amazing, right? That'd be great.
Is it enough, though, to end...
That is enough, Jesus,
to end your show on the announcement of a lesser console SKU, though. I mean, I understand how big a piece of news that is, but like, as a sort of celebratory moment, here's a thing that you've all assumed is coming and isn't as good as the thing that is already announced. I don't know.
I mean, they're going to have to do it at some point, and this is the last big event before the consoles launch. I mean, that's the reality of Gamescom. It is the last big event before these consoles launch. There was no E3 this year. They all had to do their own thing or rely on Jeff Keighley and his Summer Games or IGN or whoever. This is the last big one, which is all about the games all of the time. I can see it. Like, I can really see it. I really can. I really, really can. I suppose my final two bold predictions, Lewis. Elden Ring. Feels like time, right? Silent Hill.
Silent Hill.
We know, or it's a very badly kept secret, that there is a Silent Hill game of some description happening. Why wouldn't you announce it now if you could?
Well, you stumped me there, Mark. I was not expecting you to hit it with a Silent Hill prediction. After all the times that we've talked about Silent Hill, who knows? That would be amazing. That, again, is the kind of announcement that you could finish that show on. Absolutely, it is.
Absolutely, 100%.
Particularly if some of the other rumours about it are true.
Well, the thing is that, see, if Hideo Kojima is involved in any way in a new Silent Hill game, that is a stronger case for it to be announced at Jeff Keighley's Gamescom.
Yeah.
I don't think that's true, by the way. I don't think Hideo Kojima was involved. But I think that this would nonetheless be a good place to announce your game.
Yeah, I think it would be. Again, do you save that for the Game Awards instead? I don't know. Or do you save it for a big console showcase, if there are to be any more before the end of the year. But yeah, it absolutely merits a place there if it is real and they've got something ready to show off. And yeah, if there's any connection to Kojima, I mean, does Kojima show up anyway? Do you think we just get some Death Stranding?
Like
PC
genuinely,
port stuff,
I reckon he just makes an appearance.
Yeah,
it's going to be on a screen. Obviously,
Yeah.
I reckon he'll come on, say something, maybe introduce the next section or whatever, and then he'll be off again. I'm sure he'll be there. I have no doubt they will be there in some capacity. I don't think he'll be announcing anything at all, but I think he'll make an appearance quite genuinely. I do.
Elden Ring as well, I think that's a great shout. You've dug that up because, again, that game has gone so silent that it's hard to remember that it's in development. Feels like it's time. Yeah,
it does feel like time, right?
What else are they working on right now? Because Blue Point are doing the Demon Souls stuff, right?
Yeah, they're not involved in that.
So it's just from working on Elden Ring as far as we know. Yeah, again, it's the kind of game that you could end that showcase on, or at least have
definitely
open the showcase on it. That would be something amazing, because you've always
Miyazaki and George R.R. Martin. You could open that, have it in the middle. It doesn't matter.
Yeah,
that's going to be a huge deal.
Yeah.
A huge deal. All right, Lewis, I think we're going to have to leave it there. I'd like to remind everyone that you can find PlayersToo on all the social media. That's Facebook, Twitter, YouTube, Instagram, the lot. You can also find our written content over at PlayersToo.com. That's PlayerSTOO.com. And if you could take 5 seconds to give us 5 stars over on Apple Podcasts or wherever you get your podcasts, it really, really helps us out. It really does only take you 5 seconds, and it helps us out an immense amount. And thank you so much to anyone that's already done that for us. It genuinely means a lot. I'd like to remind everyone that our play-along game for this month is Transistor, which I have now finished.
Yeah, I'm about halfway through, I think. Enjoying it so far.
Yeah, me too. I have a lot to say. I think this is going to be a good one. And with that, ladies and gentlemen, we will see you next week.
Thanks.